So let's delve into Rosh Hashana. My first question for Rosh Hashana to get us started is, not a lot of people understand this, but we actually have 4 New Years in the Jewish calendar. And Rosh Hashanah didn't used to be the major one. So what are these 4 New Years?
If you study Tanakh, you see that there were different. There were always 2 major points in the year. There was a point in the year, the beginning of the month of Tishrei, the 7th month, and a point in the year, the beginning of the month of Nisan. But as you point out, there are different laws that have different New Years. There's a New Year for the crops, a New Year for the fruit, and all of these are relevant because in the land of Israel in biblical and temple times, and even to some degree now, you would be obligated in tithes. You shared your harvest and your food with poor people or with Levites or with different other groups of people. And you had to always tithe within that year. So you had to know when the year began and ended. And it could begin and end differently for different things. The New Year for trees would depend on the cycle of the growth of trees and be around Tu B'Shvat. The New Year for grains would be Pesach. So there were different New Years in the year. And Rosh Hashanah was to do with the royal cycles. The Judean kings versus the Israelite kings used different points in the year as their key marker of royalty. And therefore we end up with these, both of them we think are important, but Rosh Hashanah tracks the one that is not the first month of the year, but the one where we traditionally date kings' cycles from, because that ultimately you have an ultimate king. It's like a celebration of the reign of the king. And whilst we're celebrating the reign of earthly kings, and therefore the visions to which we live our life as a people, we celebrate the ultimate king, higher than all human kings, the vision of creator of the universe.
But this is where I have to say, even if you don't believe in a higher being, it's called the Day of Judgment, right? So that Day of Judgment can be a judgment that comes from above, or however metaphysically you want to think about a higher being, or it can a Day of Judgment that comes from within, that you spend the time judging yourself, evaluating yourself. So what is, from at least the halachic, the religious aspect, that Day of Judgment? What are we being judged by whom, for what reason?
Yes, we talk about judgment on Rosh Hashanah, and we talk about it 10 days later on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And they're different judgments, and we deal with them completely differently. Although as school kids or even adults, we can easily get confused and think it's just lots of days of judgment. If you look at the prayers, which often a guide to the soul of the Jewish people, where they are on Yom Kippur, we're very focused on things we've done wrong and areas we want to change and grow. But Rosh Hashanah, the prayers do not touch that issue. They touch the question of what's the center of our lives. And we keep repeating the concept that God is the center of the world, God is our king, and the dream of all mankind coming together as one in service of the same creator, same purpose, same mission. That's what we spend the whole of Rosh Hashanah really aligning ourselves with. And it's really this sense of, am I living for myself, or am I living for cosmic purpose? And that question never gets a decisive 100% answer. We talk about scales on Rosh Hashanah, but those scales do not weigh good deeds against bad deeds. They weigh who we are. They're not what we've done, they're what we've become as a result of what we've done. And that, in essence, is down to this key question: what are we living for?
Go ahead. I got so much things.
So another way to think about it is, what date does Rosh Hashanah commemorate? Now, every Jewish calendar date commemorates something. Pesach, we came out of Egypt, Passover. Yom Kippur commemorates when we were forgiven for the sin of the golden calf, etc. What's Rosh Hashanah commemorate? By tradition, it commemorates the days we were in the Garden of Eden, mankind in the Garden of Eden. And the big question was, man, are you going to be created? And if you're going to be created, are you going to choose connection or disconnection, life or death? And so that question comes back to us every Rosh Hashanah. Are you living for the oneness of Jewish people, mankind, God's vision of a perfected world?
Yes, and you said you gave the example of the scales, which, even in a unaffiliated or humanistic point of view, the scales represent justice. In the United States, the Supreme Court, the French, the blind justice. And you said we're being judged for who we are. But then what I find really interesting is that if I came up to any stranger on the street, or my friends or my family, whoever on the street, and I said, "Are you a good person?" People's immediate reaction, because of our self-serving biases and we want to see ourselves in a good light, will say, "Yes, of course I'm a good person." But then you ask them why, and people will be stumped, because that's a very complicated question to give people one day a year to do and think about. So, in fact, Rosh Hashanah, for me at least, the way I see it is, it's the first day of being judged for who we are, but also giving us 10 days to understand, who are we? Who are we to begin with? So I think of it more not as a day of, or the beginning of the days of judgment, but the beginnings of the days of feedback. We have 10 days to start thinking about ourselves, having conversations with our families, looking not just inward but outward. How does the world look? And then start seeing, are we living up to our ideals, to our values, to our goals, and what can we change?
That's a beautiful way of putting it. And I would say even deeper, are the values themselves living up to the deeper set of values? So Rosh Hashanah is very much about uncovering a deeper layer of self. And that's very much not just symbolized, but actualized, I believe, in the shofar. It's a remarkable thing. If you ask a human, as you said, are you good? Everyone's instinct is yes. But if we ask, imagine you are, right? For a moment, suspend questions of belief and disbelief. Just imagine there is a creator, and imagine the creator said, should I create you for another year? So our first instinct is yes. Why? Well, I still want to achieve this and this and this. That's you. Why should the creator give you another year? If the creator cares about and loves all of creation and its potential, what is our life going to do over the next year in order to bring that further? And bring what the creator of the universe might want for the universe, right? Not what ourselves are. And that's a much deeper place than our ordinary set of values, which is essentially abdicated. Well, society says this, that, and the other, so I'll follow this, that, and the other. Or the group I belong to says this, so I'll do this. Imagine, get above humans altogether. Imagine you're being asked, your next year doesn't yet exist, but it could exist, right? And that real deep shift. And Judaism has a claim that all of us have a voice within us that resonates with that, harmonizes with that, and is empowered by that. We have a more superficial self that's a little bit shaken by that, and that's good. But we actually have a much deeper, beautiful self that isn't as active in guiding our lives. And the idea of the shofar is a sound so simple and pure. It's more primal than any words, and even than any songs. You can't make music out of a shofar. Maybe the most skillful shofar blower in the world can, but you can't. And that's because music is deeper than words, and the shofar is a voice even deeper than that. And when we hear it, it's meant to resonate with something deep inside us that says something so pure, so pristine, and so, at the same time, strangely familiar. A strange and a familiar voice that is our voice, that we then have to turn into words and visions and so on, that really wants us to play a much deeper role.
I love that. And also we got to remember that the shofar itself is made out of a ram's horn. Again, bringing us back to, we were agriculture. We lived in the land, with the land. It's not, really it all comes from the land of Israel. Again, we can have political arguments about where that is and what that means for us today, but the undeniable fact that that's where it starts from. So I love this idea of Rosh Hashanah, and as almost a day where you're renewing your contract. Again, if you want to have, like, if you are inclined to a belief in a higher God than a higher deity, then you're renewing your contract with a higher God. If not, then you're renewing your contract just like at work. You have 10 days to start working on your presentation of what have you done this past year? How have you contributed? How have you done wrong? And how will you do better next year? And once you, in Yom Kippur, 10 days from now, you're going to get, the opportunity to present your case to your boss. and see how we can renew whoever we're going to renew your contract and maybe even get a promotion.
Yeah. And by the way, Rosh Hashanah is a celebration. It's amazing because it's asking deep and sometimes uncomfortable questions. And even the idea of judgment, we don't like judgment, but actually it celebrates our significance because it celebrates the concept. Again, I'm going to take it literally, however you want to take it. The concept that a creator of the universe would care about our choices, that we actually matter and make a difference. You don't judge something that can't behave differently. And so there's this sense that we can cohere with the most meaningful type of existence and we can make a difference. And our small improvements can have a cosmic value. And that's why after we go and all the prayers and all the shofar and everything, we then have celebratory meals. That's really, we're celebrating the meaning of our life. And yes, as flawed and frail human beings and imperfect beings, but that we actually have deep calling within us and the ability to
Beautiful. So thank you very much, Rabbi Daniel Rowe. And I hope that everyone else keeps joining us for our next conversation about Tzom Gedalia.